Robert Pattinson put the cowl back on for about 10 seconds of footage. And somehow, that 10 seconds came with bad news attached. The Batman Part 2 just got pushed back again. Fourth time. New date, February 18th, 2028. And before you roll your eyes and close the tab, stick around because the actual reason this happened is a lot more interesting than movie delayed, fans upset. There's a release calendar chess match going on behind this. There's a strategy borrowed straight from Black Panther, and there's a script writing saga that's been quietly falling apart and coming back together since 2022. I dug through the trade reports, pulled quotes from James Gunn and Matt Reeves, and found a few casting details that most channels covering this story completely missed. So let's get into it. Let's set the timeline straight, because it's genuinely wild when you lay it out. The Batman came out in March of 2022. Matt Reeves directs, Robert Pattinson stars, and it made about $770 million worldwide during a pandemic box office that was still limping back to life. That's a real hit. Reviews were strong. Zoe Kravitz, Colin Farrell, Paul Dano, Jeffrey Wright all praised. This was supposed to be the start of an ongoing franchise that lived in its own separate universe, away from whatever James Gunn was building over at DC Studios. A sequel was announced almost immediately. The original release target was October of 2025. Then it slipped to October 2026. Then October 2027. And now, February 2028. That's 4 separate release dates for one movie. And the film hasn't even wrapped photography yet. For context, that's nearly 6 years between The Batman and its own direct sequel. 6 years. To put that in perspective, the entire Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises, was made and released within 7 years total. 3 movies. Reeves is taking almost that long just to make one sequel. So naturally, people are asking, what is actually going on? Here's where a lot of coverage gets lazy. A lot of outlets just say no reason was given and move on. But if you actually read what Warner Brothers told the trade press this week, the picture is pretty clear, and it's not some secret scandal. It's 2 things layered on top of each other. Thing 1, the script took forever. Reeves has been working on this screenplay, alongside co-writer Matt Tomlin, since late 2022. Multiple reports note that for a long stretch, this movie was delayed specifically because the script wasn't finished. Not because of budget problems, not because of actor availability. The writing simply wasn't ready. Reeves is famously meticulous. He treated The Batman almost like a noir detective story instead of a traditional superhero film, and apparently getting the sequel story right took priority over hitting an earlier date. Thing 2, and this is the part almost nobody is talking about. This delay isn't really about The Batman Part 2 in isolation. It's part of a much bigger reshuffle of Warner Brothers' entire release calendar. Here's what happened. J.J. Abrams has a new film called The Great Beyond, starring Glenn Powell and Jenna Ortega. It was originally set for November 2026. Warner Brothers just moved that film all the way to October 1st, 2027, which, notice this, is the exact date that used to belong to The Batman Part 2. So Abrams' movie basically took Batman's old release slot, and Batman got bumped further down the calendar to make room. On top of that, Sam Esmail's thriller Panic Carefully, starring Julia Roberts, also got shuffled, moving from February 2027 to April 2027. And a horror film called Revenge of La Llorona slid into the date Panic Carefully vacated. So this wasn't one isolated decision about Batman being in trouble. This was Warner Brothers rearranging several major releases like puzzle pieces, and Batman happened to be the piece that got pushed out furthest. Now here's the clever part, and I think this is genuinely a smart move on Warner Brothers' end. February 18th, 2028 lands right on the 4-day President's Day holiday weekend in the United States. That specific release window has a track record. Black Panther used that exact same weekend back in 2018, and it turned into one of the biggest openings in Marvel history at the time, partly because of that extra day off work for millions of people. So instead of viewing this as Warner Brothers doesn't know what they're doing, you could also read it as a studio trading a slightly earlier date for a stronger, longer opening weekend. More post-production time to finish visual effects and sound mixing, plus a release date scientifically built for bigger crowds. That's not chaos. That's a calculated trade. Reeves seems to know fans wouldn't love hearing your movie got delayed again for the fourth time with zero context. So, alongside the announcement, he dropped something extra. Reeves posted a short piece of camera test footage on his official channels, showing Pattinson back in the Batsuit. It's not a trailer, it's not a full scene, it's essentially a lighting and camera test. The kind of thing directors shoot early on to make sure the costume, the cowl, and the cinematography are all working together before full production kicks into gear. But symbolically, it's the first confirmation in years that this movie is actually physically being made. Filming reportedly began within the last month, after years of the project existing only as drafts and rewrites. And it's not a small shoot either. Pattinson himself has talked about the production, revealing the sequel includes something like 11 weeks of night shoots. 11 weeks. Filming almost entirely after dark, which tracks with the moody, rain-soaked, nocturnal tone the first movie built its whole identity around. He's also addressed online criticism about his physique for the role directly, saying, in his own words, that he worked out every single day to prepare. So whatever people think about the delays, the physical commitment on his end appears to be real. Now let's talk casting, because this is genuinely one of the stranger crossovers in recent superhero movie history. 3 Marvel Cinematic Universe actors are jumping over to this DC film. Sebastian Stan, who played Bucky Barnes for over a decade in the MCU. Scarlett Johansson, who was Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow herself, for basically the entire Infinity Saga. And Brian Tyree Henry, who played Phastos in Eternals. That's not a small detail. That's 3 actors from one of the most iconic superhero franchises in movie history, all showing up in a completely separate, competing franchise's sequel. Johansson and Henry's actual roles have not been officially confirmed. Warner Brothers is keeping that under wraps. But Stan is widely reported to be playing Harvey Dent, the district attorney who, in most Batman stories, eventually becomes the villain Two-Face. Here's the twist, though. Set photos leaked showing Stan with a shaved head on set, which doesn't exactly match the classic Harvey Dent look. That detail set off a wave of speculation that he might actually be playing Victor Zash instead, a much darker, more disturbing Batman villain known for scarring his own body to count as victims. Zash already appeared briefly in the first Batman film, played by a different actor, so there's a real possibility Reeves is either recasting the role or building him into something much bigger this time. Warner Brothers has not confirmed or denied either theory. So for now, it's genuinely unclear whether Stan is Dent, Zash, or possibly even both across the story. On top of that trio, the cast has also added Charles Dance, known for major roles in prestige television and blockbuster franchises, and Sebastian Koch, a respected European actor known for tense, morally complicated roles. Neither of their characters has been revealed yet either. Reeves is clearly building out a much bigger ensemble than the first film had, and keeping almost all of it mystery. Returning from the original cast, Pattinson as Bruce Wayne, Andy Serkis as Alfred, Colin Farrell as Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, whose spin-off series on Max already expanded that character significantly. Here's where it gets bigger than just one movie. Reeves' Batman universe exists completely separately from James Gunn's DC Universe reboot, the one that includes Superman and the upcoming Man of Tomorrow. Technically, these are 2 different continuities, 2 different Batmen eventually. Gunn's slate, officially called Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, already has its own Batman project planned, a story called The Brave and the Bold. But Gunn has publicly stated before that he does not want 2 separate live-action Batman movies releasing in the same calendar year. That would confuse audiences and split box office attention. Before this delay, the Batman Part 2 and Gunn's Man of Tomorrow were actually on a collision course. Man of Tomorrow is filming right now, too, and the 2 films were originally set to arrive within months of each other, which would have marked the first time Warner Brothers released a live-action Batman movie and a live-action Superman movie in the same year. Now that Reeves' film has been pushed to 2028, that overlap is avoided, at least for now. But it also almost certainly means Gunn's own Batman reboot, The Brave and the Bold, gets pushed even further down his own release calendar, since he's already said he doesn't want the two versions of Bruce Wayne competing for attention. So one delay on Reeves' side quietly reshuffles Gunn's long-term plans too, even though neither studio wants to say that directly. Predictably, fans are frustrated. Social media lit up within hours of the announcement. A lot of people pointing out that this film has now been delayed longer than some entire trilogies take to release. And that frustration is fair. 6 years between films is a long wait by modern blockbuster standards. But James Gunn actually addressed this exact criticism after an earlier delay, and it's worth hearing his side. He pointed out that long sequel gaps are actually more common in film history than people remember. 7 years between the original Alien and Aliens. 14 years between the two Incredibles movies. 7 years between the first two Terminator films. 13 years between the two Avatar movies. 36 years between the two Top Gun films. And even within Marvel, 6 years between Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and Volume 3. So historically, long waits for sequels aren't actually rare. What's changed is audience expectation. We're used to a new Marvel movie every few months, so a 6-year gap for Batman feels unusually slow by comparison. Even though by older Hollywood standards, it's fairly normal. Where does that leave us? The Batman Part 2 is now locked, at least for the moment, at February 18th, 2028. Filming is underway. The cast has grown into one of the strangest Marvel to DC crossovers in recent memory, and the mystery around Sebastian Stan's character alone is going to fuel fan theories for the next year and a half. Is this the last delay? Nobody can promise that. This film has already moved 4 times. But for the first time in years, there's actual footage, actual night shoots happening, and an actual production in motion. That's more progress than this project has shown in a long time. What do you think Sebastian Stan is actually playing? Harvey Dent? Zash? Or something we haven't even guessed yet? Drop your theory in the comments. I read every one of them. And if you want more breakdowns like this the moment new footage or casting news drops, subscribe, because this story is nowhere near finished. I'll see you in the next one.